Hello, hello. So just a bit of continuation on the last little ramble I was on. And yeah, finally got some comments, which is nice. Yeah, some guy called Hypnotic Stench. Reminds me of Diogenes a bit there. Just talking about confidence in fantasy being a key factor in learning and intelligence. Um, yeah, as you can see in the reply to that, yeah, I do really think like active imagination, like in the Jungian sense, is incredibly important in breaking through, finding new ideas. And yeah, I do put a lot of weight in Jung in that sense. Although some of the things he says are obscure to say the least, but he's been extremely useful to me in a number of ways, especially in terms of my views on religion, religiosity, the origins of religion, that kind of thing. He's really tapped into something with the archetypes and such. Other than that, you're just sort of mentioning the brain development of knowledge, how sleep is important. Yeah. 100%. But again, I have studied a reasonable amount of cognitive neuroscience, but I try to avoid getting into the technical nitty gritty of it here in that sense. A fascinating concept you might want to look into, obviously, concept is the inhibition of return in visual stimulus and how the human brain copes with that. It's like we always looking for something novel. We kind of see through or block out what isn't there, which does bring me on to what I want to talk about today. It's a continuation of the whole sort of epistemology theme of the last video I made, but I wanted to focus. I think it would make more sense to sort of focus on the idea of knowledge as well here, because if I'm talking about learning and trying to distinguish it from just knowing stuff, then yeah, I should really try to articulate in some loose way what I mean about knowledge, and this might be a bit difficult as well, which is why we're here. Well, why I'm here anyway. So now, so in terms of learning, I've not really, obviously within like a couple of days, I've not really gained any new insights into this. There's a few things bouncing around in my head, but I I kind of just view there's something happening within us where we are doing something in a very um stochastic sense, and it's kind of randomized, but that's not learning itself, because like we can just sort of attempt to do a million different things, but if it's not directed, I think there must be some kind of directive element to how we think in a way, and that is sort of pointed roughly in some kind of direction through some kind of innate heuristic, be it what we're born with or genetically, whatever that may be, interaction with the environment. Yeah, I don't really believe in the whole um what is it, the nature nurture dichotomy. I think it's completely irrelevant in philosophical terms. It's a nice distinction to make in certain situations, I will grant that, but overall my view is that it's basically they're one and the same thing, really. But in the primacy of the human being, then yeah, obviously it makes sense to make some vague distinction there. And in that sense, I'm saying that there's some maybe innate thing within us which is a directive element, and then from there it's stochastic, sort of random, some kind of random algorithm where we just look at different things, and this then has a feedback kind of a cybernetic loop, and we learn by accident. It's like accidents happening within our brain somewhere, but we are able, as time goes on, to force it into certain directions. And as I was mentioning last time, with like not going into the physicality of the matter too much, yeah, your brain cells die out, but your connections build up. So it's more about the whole, what fires together, wires together. And I think this is where we can get, we can misunderstand certain things. Anyway, let's leave that to one side for now, because my God, I didn't really get much purchase on that last time. But when it comes to knowledge, I'm very much in line with the whole Kantian notion of this. It does make perfect sense, but I do like to look towards the phenomenological sense, as in Husserl, who ironically I discovered through cognitive neuroscience. I just found I can't even remember exactly where it was. I think it was in Gazzaniga's cognitive science book. Like one of the studies, he was like mentioned phenomenology, and I was like, what the hell is this? And yeah, that opened up that world to me. But the whole sort of notion of knowing, and again, we're prone to say about certain things we know, and this is quite common throughout philosophical literature. Different ways of knowing things, different facts, so to speak, like abstract facts, objective facts, objectivity, and such. But I kind of have this bizarre notion that it's what we call knowledge and knowing is more. It's more about our attention to something. Also, Husserl will sort of say the intentionality. We're always conscious of something. We're not conscious of nothing. There's always something we're directing our consciousness to, our awareness to, our attention to. And in this sense, when people are talking about sort of absolute facts, something like 1 + 1 = 2. Now, anything that is drawn directly into like my conscious attention, like I've just said then, like 1 + 1 = 2, it's a questionable idea, even if our ability to question this thing makes no sense whatsoever. So if I say to you, like, what's your opinion of upside down bananas at Wednesday whenever it rains in Sweden? It's kind of like, what? But the question, there is something there that we're attending to and thinking about in some way. Like we're consciously fixed on it. Something, again, harkening back to the whole sort of inhibition of return idea. It's like what we recognize, we don't see. And in that sense, I kind of have this idea of some absolute knowledge, as in it's what isn't currently in our conscious awareness is what I would refer to as our absolute knowledge. Something like right now, you're not thinking about breathing. You're not thinking about you're stood on a planet Earth, orbiting the sun. But again, as soon as we draw attention to these things, we can then, like, they're in the sphere of investigating them. And again, this gets a little bit back to the whole Husserlian point of view here, in a phenomenological sense, with I think it's an eidetic. Like, you can't, the example that he gives is quite nice. Like, you can't look at, like, say, you can't look at this cube and you automatically, you know there's a back to it, but you never see the back, so to speak. We're never aware of every part of it. It's inside, it's outside, it could be hollow inside, we don't know. But again, there's that thing about something we imbue, or I think he uses the term like different sort of pregnant with this the other side. We don't see it as a two-dimensional object. And yeah, it's this kind of, we don't have full knowledge of the object. To me, questions like this is more like this is different when we're talking about physical items compared to abstract, but the same principles kind of underlie it. It's like you can't think of a circle that has no center. It doesn't make sense. You can't think of a square with 3 sides. It doesn't make sense. So it's that kind of thing. But those, I would say, that would be more like the apodictic knowledge that people refer to. Whereas I guess what I'm referring to in the sense of like this absolute knowledge, it would be this kind of, I guess you call it sort of apodic, the pure apodictic in a way. But again, it's something we can never know. This is, again, lots of relations here to the whole Kantian noumenum, as in it's something that we, in talking about something that doesn't exist, we are just highlighting that we're not really talking about it. That's anything that can be referred to in any way has an existence, whereas what cannot be referred to does not have an existence. And yeah, it's a very, very strange concept and a weird way of looking at knowledge, but that's how I kind of look at it. And when it comes to us humans and learning, so if I'm kind of applying that kind of thinking to knowledge, you might be able to see why this idea of like what learning is intriguing me quite a bit. Because I guess what I'm possibly pointing at is the learning is not actually learning. It's more or less we are moving up and down like a hierarchy in a kind of a random sense between certain levels of knowledge, even levels of certainty in a way, might be a better way to put it. But it turns it into a probabilistic function. Hence, I say stochastic. And yeah, I wonder if that could actually be what learning is all about. But yeah, then there's the issue of like knowledge and knowing. And yeah, if you see my hand now, like, quite simply, do you know I exist? You're watching me on a 2-dimensional screen. You don't know I exist. And is this I remember it's Stephen Fry when he was giving it was in the monk debate some time back. And I remember him quoting Bertrand Russell saying like blah 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 blah. I can't remember the exact quote. Like let doubt win all the time. And yeah, so you always remain open, remain doubtful about certainties, be skeptical, and I think that is a very healthy way to be. But yeah, knowledge is a funny thing. And I guess I will sort of go back into the whole learning thing, because this is kind of the heart of where I won't say started my journey away, but it kind of did begin through writing fiction and exploring different ideas. And I would often switch quite quickly because I wanted to write a fictional book, but for it to be like in a sort of my own made-up world, but in a very realistic way, very tangible, real way. And so every time I started looking into something, I started going in-depth research and learning about so many things just to make this world more real. Then I get more obsessed with the reality. And it's this constant sort of back and forth. And that in and of itself, it kind of gets to what I believe about learning in a way. And the title that I've put on for this YouTube channel, the nascent, it's becoming nascent, which someone a long time ago when I said that, they were saying that just means like becoming. But I think I'm not, again, it's a very sort of bordering on mystical woo-wah kind of stuff, this kind of thinking. But and Husserl has been been accused of similar kind of things, more so Jung, I would say, but the whole kind of or like idealism and the whole idea of labeling these things is kind of disturbing in a way. It can really box things out, but it seems to be necessary. Again, Husserl's really going against atomizing things, like scientific reduction, trying to find the grounding and the base of things in the physical world, which, yeah, I think it does have a use up to a point. But then if we're explaining, we can't explain emergent properties and things like this, which is a real problem for many aspects of investigation, such as consciousness, which I ain't getting into. Not today, anyway. Well, anyway, bit of a waffle here. I'm not quite sure what else I can say at the moment. Just wanted to jump in with a semi-reply. And yeah, what I'm planning to do is maybe think about what I'm going to say in a little bit more, sort of plan things out a little bit more before I come and start speaking here and making a video. But at the same time, like I said, I do want to practice this ability to speak. And again, it could... I don't want to just be repeating what other philosophers have said. Rather using them as stepping stones on to explore new ideas. I guess that's what's... It's often what I find a bit frustrating about channels I see on YouTube. It's like people, they're very much open to parroting the philosophy of other people like Kant and such, but then applying something else on top of it. I don't really see this happening so much, which is all well and good, because that's not what they're meant to be doing. They're just sort of imparting the information. But I'm saying it's learning. I'm trying to sort of show an active learning process as I'm making these videos, as painful as it may be to watch sometimes. But in some ways, yeah, explaining, this is a thing as well, which is very, very true. You explain something and you sort of uncover the limitations in your knowledge, and you learn through doing that. You spot gaps and you begin to fill them in. And all that I see when I'm speaking here is the kind of the thoughts I have and the ability to well, that might be one place to go, because yeah, the whole idea of thinking and linguistics and language, that is probably why I do find this so difficult, because I don't really think a great deal in words. I do. I think, I talk to myself in my head like everyone does. But what I mean is I can just sort of ask myself a question and sit and contemplate it. But I don't know what I'm doing, because there's no words for it. It's something, it's there. And to me, that is like, am I learning in that moment? Maybe that is the whole thing that's connected here. I'll give you an example. I'll try and think about what learning is now and trying to describe what's going on. Yeah, I'm just looking at the wall and patterns. And yeah, there's no way to describe that, is there really? Yeah, there's no, it's kind of a, this is, I do actually remember my old English teacher back in secondary school. And I'd never heard of it before. I was really shocked when he said this. And we must have been like, I don't know, 15 years old or something, 14, 15 years old. And he said that he cannot produce images in his head. He thinks in words only, just words. He cannot imagine what someone or something looks like. It's all words. And that blew my mind. Because apparently there's quite a number of people out there who are like my English teacher. And to me, that's just extraordinary. But clearly, he can think, he can learn. But as the guy was saying with the whole point of sleep as well and dreaming, I have seen this, and I've seen studies done on this. Um, Not personally, but you know, I've read up on the studies where they investigate how memories are stored in our sleep and how we actually go through a process of if you're it's usually something motor skill, something physical, like you're learning to do a certain action, play a certain sport, and in your dream, your brain sort of recycles what's going on. Oh, sorry, cycles through what's gone on again, and they kind of simulate it. So when you wake up the next day, you're better, even though you've not physically been practicing. Your brain was practicing when you were asleep, which is an intriguing idea. So therefore, you've learned how to do something without knowing you've learned to do something. And I think the development in in education as such, the reason why certain techniques work on certain pupils and children is because we're able to tap into their unconscious more. Maybe children are just far more open when they're young, rather than just having lots of neurons. Maybe there's more to it than that, or there's a transitional stage between just a sponge for information, and at some point there's a feedback going on. But anyway, just it's blind speculation. That's why I'm saying I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of the actual objective science of this, because that's not what I'm here for. Although I do need to get up to date on all that stuff. It's been a while. It's been a while since I've really looked into what's going on in neuroscience properly. Anyway, that is a ramble, and what more can I say about it? I'll leave it there, as unformed as it is. So maybe I'll be back very shortly with something more cogent. Maybe not. Hey, bye bye.